Hello and welcome back. This video today was a request from a subscriber on how I made the little canisters for Grandma's kitchen. And you guys don't know how happy this makes me feel, because it means that what I'm doing is inspiring you guys to go ahead and do things like that. You obviously like what I do if you're asking me to do a video on it. And that just means the world to me, because it means that in some small way I'm succeeding. So let's get started. Now I'm going to tell you up front, the canisters I made for Grandma's house do not open. You can't take the lids off. I glued them down. However, I will make this one so that the lid does open, and that way if you want you'll be able to open it up and you can see whatever's inside. So what we need is buttons. Now for the base I used flat buttons, and I've glued two together because one button, unless you have thicker buttons, is very, very thin and a little harder to work with. So I glued two together. I have a lot of these buttons. And then I'm using a lightweight cardstock. Now you could use poster board, and I just made this one up because I hadn't made them for, well, since I made them. And with the cardstock, I don't know if you can see, but it doesn't come out completely rounded. It doesn't matter. I've tried everything. If someone knows a good way to get cardstock to go around, I've tried with my fingers. I wrapped it around this little tool because the handle is pretty uniform, but I still ended up with the little bumps in it. So I'm using a lightweight cardstock. You could use a heavier weight cardstock. Basically whatever you know works for you and you feel most comfortable using. I cut out a piece of the little paper with the little cherries on it. Oops, let me get turned around. And that's what I'm going to be using for the outside, because honestly, that's just cute. And very kitchen-y, especially if you're doing like a retro or a vintage kitchen. Yeah, that's really cool, I think. So what I did, and this, I'm not a very scientific crafter, so basically what I did was I just took the cardstock. You could measure, if you have one of those little sewing tape measures, that would be amazing. I have two, and I can't find even one. So I had to do it the hard way. So what I did was I just, let's get rid of a little bit of this. This is crazy. I'll just cut a long strip up. Okay, so what I did was I just wrapped it around the button, made sure that I had it good and snug up to the button. And yes, it would help if you roll it on something first. Please do that. And I just made sure I had a good snug fit around my button. Then I just took a pencil and kind of marked where I want it, where I know it's going to overlap just a little bit. I don't want a lot of an overlap, but just enough to overlap for gluing purposes. And I just cut it to the size I need. Get that out of here. And yeah, I'm going to roll it around this a little bit before I glue it. Just so it wants to kind of have that rounded shape. So, yeah. Alright, it's curving. So the next thing I did was I took some glue, and you can use whatever type of glue you like to use. Super glue, tacky glue, any glue that'll hold. And I just kind of ran it around the edge of my buttons. Glue all over my fingers, excuse me. Get that off. And then I took just a little dab of glue and put it on one edge of the cardstock I'm using. And I just started wrapping it again tightly around my little button, making sure that it is snugged up to the button. It's kind of fiddly, but it works. Okay. Now I'm just going to hold it. Now you could use like a paper clip, which I have done, but I find sometimes that the paper clip, being it's so big, will bend whatever medium you're using. It's fine with the cardstock, but it did not work well with the poster board. Make sure that your button is flat, because if you hold it up and put the paper clip in, it could push the button out. So make sure it's flat so it sits nice. And make sure that your cardstock or whatever you're using is all even on the top. And we're just going to sit and let that dry for a couple minutes, and I'll be back. So now that I have my little canister basically glued together, I filled the holes on the bottom with some glue. And that's in case you want to paint it, you don't want the holes to show. I didn't do that on Grandma's because it didn't matter. They were going to be, I used wax to attach them to the little shelf they're on. So the next thing you need to do is figure out what kind of a lid do you want on your little canister. Do you want just a more flat type lid, where you would go with a flatter button? This button, the little white part on there, the little white ring in the middle is raised. It's kind of cute. There are a lot of rounded buttons out there that you could use if you wanted a really round, domed top. I believe on one of Grandma's, I used all different buttons on those. They came out good. I mean, they don't look like they don't really match. There are these type of buttons here. Gives you kind of a little lip and then the rounded part. And this has a plastic shank, so it's really easy to cut off. Yeah, there are so many different ways you could do your top, depending on the buttons you have or whatever you choose to use. You wouldn't have to use buttons, but that's just what I used. So I chose this gray button, and it's just a plain button. It's got a little indent on the inside. I'm going to use it with the front of the button down. And then I found this little half round button that I'm going to be putting up on top of it to give it a little domed top. So the next thing I'm gonna do is just glue these two buttons together, and I'm gonna wait until they're dry. So I'm just putting some glue on the top of here because it's easier than putting it on a little rounded button. And then I'm just gonna try to center that on this button. Now this will be painted, so it won't matter. And while I'm waiting for the glue to take, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my little piece of scrapbook paper, and you can use whatever you want for this part. If you have really thick, heavy, good scrapbook paper, you might be able to get away with just using that instead of the cardstock for the basic shape. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to be mindful of where my seam is because I want my seam in the back. I don't want that to show. So I'm going to find where that's at, and I'm going to put my scrapbook paper opposite of it on the front. And I'm just going to start in the middle, and I'm going to start wrapping it around, making sure that my edges are even with the top of the container. There we go. All right. It's already starting to look just really cute. I love it. I love that paper. I'm almost out of it. So we're going to have to wait a little bit for this to dry. And I think while we're doing that, I've got a little bitty, tiny, you can't see it, little bitty red glass bead that I'm going to be gluing up on top. And since I might want to leave that red, I think I will wait because it's, a cherry theme. And, I'll be back when this is set up. Okay, so I believe that my little lid is now dry enough that I can work on it. And what I've done is I have taken some wax and I have attached it to a golf tee so I can paint it. Now, if I was using acrylic paint, I would probably put something like gesso over it or something so that the paint will stick to the buttons. And I did that with Grandma's. And if you don't have gesso, there are plenty of videos on YouTube how to make your own. So you could go check those out. Or I don't know if Mod Podge would work over the top, something like that maybe. I've not tried it. So anyway, I'm now going to, I've got Tester's model paint here, and it's made to go over plastic, so we will see how that works. I'm also going to be painting the flat side of this little button. The glue is unreal, because that's how I'm going to make it so that this canister can open. Not sure how many coats this will take. And I've got a couple holes in the top of that little button, but I'm not going to worry about those. This one is strictly for the purpose of showing you how I created the ones for Grandma, for her house. I probably should have roughed up this button a little bit. That also helps when you're painting them, but I didn't. And this paint is going to take a little while to dry. I remember my brother, when he was younger, had a model of the Starship Enterprise, and he painted it with the silver, and that thing took like years to dry, I swear. What I like about the model paint is it usually will cover in one coat. So that's always a thought. It's a little more expensive, but it does work. I just need to find some place to set this. I'll just use a little clip. Set it like that. And now I'm going to paint just the one side of this button and the edges. I'm not filling the holes. As I said, this one is just strictly to show you how I did this. Whether I use it or not in something or for something, I don't know yet. Now, somewhere, sorry about all the noise, trying my best to locate a toothpick I just had laying here. Guys, this is why I'm trying to clean out my craft room. It's just an absolute mess. Try to pick the button up. I would definitely do this before you start painting. It would probably help a lot. So pick it up on this toothpick and go around the edges. Not ideal because my button is now turning as I try to paint. But we'll get it. Alright, that looks pretty good. So now I will just stick that little piece of foam I have, and we'll be back when those are dry. So now I am just going to take my glue and as soon as it gets down there, I am going to just put some glue on the bottom of the button that we're using for the lid. Put quite a bit on there. I'm going to take this other button and I'm going to try to center it as best I can. And I'm going to let that sit and dry. Now my model paint is just a little bit tacky yet. So while the glue is drying, the model paint won't finish drying, and I think that's about as even as I'm going to get it. So I'm back. The last thing that I did was I glued a little red glass bead to the top. Now this is not a very good looking canister in my opinion. The little button I glued on underneath will keep the lid from falling off. I mean, you're not going to be able to tip it clear to the side, but it'll keep it from falling off when it's on. But yeah, that's how it's looking. Sorry about that. I think it's cute. I'm not sure I would ever do a lid like this again, but then again, it is what it is. It came out like it did, and I'm going to go with that. They're a lot of fun to make, kind of addicting. Yeah, my bead's not quite dry. I should have had super glue for the bead, and I would use super glue on any of the plastic surfaces possible. So yeah, this one does open. Little thing keeps it shut. Nobody sees it unless you open it. And there you have your little canister. I hope that this video was helpful to you, and I hope that if you do go ahead and make some, that you have a lot of fun doing it. You can embellish them so many ways. You could put a little sticker on them. You could paint them if you're going for an enamel look or you want it to look like ceramic. You could use a gloss Mod Podge. You could use diamond glaze. I've seen where people have taken like packing tape, and before they put their paper on, they coat it with packing tape, and that gives it a nice shiny appearance. So there's a lot of different things you can do and a lot of different ways you can make them. Remember, there's no right and no wrong. It's your house, your craft, your creation. You do it the way you want to do it. This was just a guide, and I thank you again to the person who wanted me to do this video. I love when people want me to do a video for them. I've not had that in a while. So yeah, anyway, that's it. And I really don't know if I will use this one or not, but it's kind of big for a canister, honestly. I think I would have went a ½ an inch instead of the 5/8, but it could still be used for something to store things in. So yeah. I'm just moving my lid around because I don't want it to stick. The paint is 99% dry, but I don't want it sticking. But anyway, yeah, that's it. So I hope this was helpful to you. Thank you all again for joining me. If you like what you see on this channel and you're just stopping by, please hit like and subscribe. It does help the channel out. And it's free to do. It costs you nothing. So everyone, have a great day. Bye-bye.